4, 3, 2, 1, go.
I'm here with Peter O'Brien and Dave Dwan, the brains and the brawn and the organisers and everything else that goes with Five Passes. So tell us a little bit about it, guys. Pete?
Well, 2006, 140 riders. We've grown from 5 riders on the first tour to 140, so things are really cranking this year.
I agree. That's very natural, isn't it?
Come on, Dave, what do you do?
What do I do? Pete and I work in this together. I look after a lot of sponsors. I look after some logistics on support crew bits and pieces like that, but mainly the sponsors, getting the product, getting some buckaroos in the door so it can make it worthwhile, and so that when the riders arrive, they've got all the gear they need, food, accommodation, it's all sorted out.
Great stuff. So how did it all start?
Well, winter in the garage. About 5-6 years ago, we started doing these indoor wind trainer sessions in the garage, watching the Tour de France with Scott Molina and a couple other mates, and one stage we started talking about doing training sessions, and I thought, well, it'd be really good to do 4 or 5 days of training. Had a few mates that were getting away for long blocks of training, and I thought, well, what would be a good idea? And we just chatted about it and came up with a bit of a course, and there it was. Five Passes was born.
Good idea.
Great idea. Tough the first one though. Nor'wester, down to 12 k's an hour, Gordo burn on the front, pulling us all through. I've this vivid memory of Mary Jones at the end of first day. We used to do to Maruga Springs on the first day, which was about 212 k's. It turned absolute custard, poured with rain. Old Mary got off the bike, she couldn't even move. We put her in the shower, clothes and all, hot shower on, just to thaw her out and get her back on track again. But that's my vivid memory of the first year. Apart from me getting in the van, perhaps once or twice.
Getting in the van?
Well, I'd never done, the longest I'd done was 80 k's.
Right, I know. Well, Dave took a while to toughen up. He took about 3 years. For the first year, he did all right. I think he got to out of Amberley and got to Hiranui, but he didn't have many k's under the belt, so he spent a bit of time in the van looking at the scenery from out the window.
Great support.
He did a good job. It was a tough day that first day. Even some of the strongest guys looked a bit sad halfway through. Yeah. But we all made it, and Dave lived to come and conquer the Five Passes a year or two later.
Yeah.
We'll just leave Pete and Dave for a minute, just to go over some details of what Evans Pass is all about. It climbs from sea level to 200 metres in a space of around 3k, and its steepest part is around 11.5 to 12% gradient. So it's a pretty short, sharp climb. The riders are really going to feel it coming up here. So,
how would that compare to the likes of Dyer's Pass at the start there? The steeper gradient at the top there?
well, it's probably pretty similar to the gradient, but over distance this goes longer for steeper.
And the steep bit's just in the picture there, the bit that's off the picture.
When you go around the last, just before you get to the last bend, it's probably the worst part.
It goes up when you're starting to blow a bit.
It sneaks up on you and bites.
For those of you who aren't familiar with Christchurch, Evans Pass leads from Sumner Beach and it goes over the Port Hills down into Lyttelton Harbour, which is the main harbour of Christchurch. There's probably a number of Christchurch riders who may not have ridden up Evans Pass from the Sumner side. Most of the common harbour rides begin on the other side, either leading over Dyer's Pass from the city down into Governor's Bay, and then around, then you come up Evans Pass from the other side, which is considerably less steep. That's short bays and long bays. Is when you go around the edge of the Port Hills through Taitat, over Gebbies Pass, and then again through Governor's Bay, Lyttelton, and up the far less challenging incline of the rear of Evans Pass, so that this front end is really much more of a challenge. So we'll return now to the earlier interview with Pete and Dave, directors of the Five Passes.
So for someone that's watching this, how would you describe Five Passes to them? What would you say?
Well, the first thing would be what their expectations would be. I mean, there's some very experienced riders who came with us, like Gordo Byrne, Scott Molina, those sort of guys, Steve Gurney, they've done it. So their expectations are totally different from someone like myself, who just had only done 80 k's was their longest ride. But having said that, it's a huge challenge, but it's hugely satisfying having got through each stage and each day. And gosh, you have deep days when you're thinking, what am I doing here? And I wish this day was over. But at the end of each day, you're glad you did it, and hanging in there is what it's all about.
I think the answer's changed every year, to be honest. I think it's evolved with the numbers in the tour. The first year, the demographics were small, we all mixed together. It was just a fantastic experience. I came riding up the causeway thinking, man, I don't think I want to do this again. This is just so good, we can't do it better. But then the next year it was a different group of people, different demographics, different personalities and different mix. And each year the people that come along create the event. They create the character. There's the funny guys. There's the people that do silly things like take their clothes off and ride naked down Porter's Pass.
Yes.
There's that's all those sorts of things that happen.
Yeah.
So for everyone, I think there's been a huge satisfaction in doing it. There's been a huge amount of fun, and depending on your level of fitness and your level of experience, you get different things out of it. But everybody seems to have a buzz when they finish. I think it's a nice combination of easy, relaxed riding and meeting people, as well as some really competitive stuff. And I really like that you can be competitive, you can race your mates, you can play Tour de France, you can go for the yellow jersey, go for the sprint, go for the KOM, but at night you can still have a beer and you'll have an easy part of a ride the next day. It's not all racing from start to finish.
No.
So I think that has some really good elements.
Yeah, sure. I think, like Pete said, this year's totally different. We've gone from 65 riders to 140 riders, and we've got teams now, which we've never had before. So let's bring a totally new dimension to the whole event, which is going to be quite exciting. It's going to be very much similar to Tour de France, and people have asked me on bunch rides, what do you think we should do? And I said, well, you look after your sprinter, you look after your KOM, you've got to decide what you're going to do, when you're going to do it, and who's going to do it. So it becomes a little bit more tactical now. But the underlying thing is, everyone I've talked to on the bunch rides this year said they're looking forward to having some fun. And that's the underlying issue of the whole thing, isn't it?
Yes, I think the difference between this event and a lot of other events is that there is that element of social riding, that element of meeting people, the element of having a beer after you've finished and not being too worried about it. And then there's also the element of the edge of having competition as well. So it's a great mix.
It has slightly changed this year from past years with regards to the triathlon element that has been in there in previous years. Why is that?
Well, that's logistics. 140 riders, with 80% of them probably cyclists, and maybe 20% of them triathletes. Originally, it was born of triathletes like myself and Dave and Scott Molina and them. So the idea was it was a training event, and that we biked and we did a bit of swimming and a bit of running, and that was fun. But with 140 people, it gets a bit difficult. So I think what we might have to do is just start another little event for triathlons, for triathletes, and just keep this one as a cycling event. It makes it work much better.
Only the few hardy guys get out and do the swim at Brunner at night at the end of a 200k bike ride, and then get up the next morning and do the same thing before they go up Arthur's Pass. So this year, with such large numbers, we just don't have time to do all of that. So it will mean another event, I'm sure.
So watch the space.
Another event's coming, eh?
Of course.
Yeah.
Always.
Excellent. Well, that's pretty much wrapped it up tonight. Bring on the tour.
Cheers. Yeah, cheers. Yeah.
Here we have the last of the riders now coming up Evans Pass. In this section of the course, the gradient actually steepens. This is quite near the top. There's a sharp left-hander which then leads up another small climb before you hit the finish line. You can see Steve Gurney there as defending champion is last away, and perhaps surprisingly he's already caught last year's King of the Mountain winner, Brent McMeeking.
So the state of the tour after the prologue, James Gibson going up the mountain like a goat, Scott Molina very close behind, just 4 seconds down, and Steve Gurney sitting pretty in third there, just 7 seconds down on James. No sprint points available today, and James Gibson obviously leading the King of the Mountain after the prologue. And in the women we have Pernell Fletcher out in front, Kathy Hanmer in second place 45 seconds down, Linda Ronaldson a further 15 seconds back. And again, no sprint points available today. Pernell Fletcher taking the KOM. The veterans, current leaders are Mary Jones and Neil Everest.
Yeah. If I got a call you if you don't hear from me, it's